Welcome to Starbound. My name is Gabriel the Bibi Capaldi, and I'll be your narrator today. Nearly 500 supporters get early access to our stories, including brand new episodes of Sunspire Academy and Frerin and Rimiki. If you'd like to unlock early access and support new episodes and future series, tap join below to become a Starbound member. Now, let's get into today's story. Kori Takahashi massaged her temples as the arrivals terminal at Tokyo International Spaceport erupted into chaos. 5 7-foot-tall, teal-skinned aliens had managed to topple a luggage cart, sending what appeared to be metal barbells clattering across the polished floor. Other travelers gave them a wide berth, while security officers exchanged uncertain glances.
I am most apologetic, tiny human professor.
The largest of the aliens bounded towards her with surprising grace despite his bulk. His cranial fin, resembling a mohawk made of translucent cartilage, vibrated with excitement.
Groldak was attempting to demonstrate Earth's gravitational difference is using luggage physics.
That's not a thing, Vraxon, Kori responded, trying to keep the exasperation from her voice. And please, indoor voices, remember what we discussed during orientation? Vraxon's fin drooped slightly.
Yes, humans have delicate auditory systems and startle easily.
He turned to his companion and made a theatrical gesture of lowering his volume.
Brothers, we must protect the fragile humans with our sound discipline.
The other 4 Frisk immediately began stage whispering so loudly that several nearby humans winced. This was going to be a long 3 weeks. As a professor of xenolinguistics at Tokyo University, Kori had volunteered for the cultural exchange program, expecting to host scholars or diplomats. Instead, she'd been assigned this quintet of what essentially amounted to extraterrestrial fraternity brothers from the frigid moon Nylash. Their species, the Frisk, had only joined the Galactic Concord 2 years ago, and these 5 were apparently considered among their brightest young adults. That thought alone was concerning.
Professor Kori,
the one called Toth approached, carefully stepping around the scattered exercise equipment.
My atmospheric analyzer indicates increased nitrogen-oxygen ratios compared to the embassy. Is this calibrated correctly?
He thrust a blinking device toward her face. At least one of them seemed to have scientific interests. The embassy probably has atmospheric adjustments for various species. This is Earth's natural atmosphere. Toth's eyes widened, their vertical pupils dilating with interest.
Fascinating. I shall document this variation for my personal knowledge database.
He began typing rapidly on a wrist device using his webbed fingers. If you're all quite finished wreaking havoc, Kori said, our train to Nagano leaves in 20 minutes.
Nagano?
Pronounced Pimple, the most food-obsessed of the group according to their dossiers.
This is where the samurai warriors train in the ways of culinary combat, yes?
No, Kori sighed. That's not...
I have prepared extensively for ritual combat with these samurai,
announced Loomis, the shortest of the aliens, though still towering over Kori. He struck what he clearly believed was a martial arts pose, but looked more like he was attempting to impersonate a flamingo.
Their legendary rice paper armor will be no match for my superior reach.
Kori pinched the bridge of her nose. Their application had mentioned an interest in traditional Japanese warrior culture, but she hadn't realized they genuinely expected to battle samurai. Samurai haven't existed for centuries. We're going to Nagano Prefecture for its natural beauty, historical sites, and onsen, hot springs.
Hot springs?
The 5th alien, Groldak, spoke for the first time. His voice was surprisingly soft compared to his massive frame.
Water that emerges from the ground at elevated temperatures?
Exactly, Kori nodded, relieved that at least one concept wouldn't require elaborate explanation. Japan sits on a volcanically active zone, so we have many natural hot springs. They're used for relaxation and have health benefits. The 5 Frisk exchanged glances she couldn't interpret. their cranial fins shifting positions in what appeared to be a form of non-verbal communication.
Most intriguing,
Vraxon finally said, his tone oddly formal.
We shall observe this phenomenon with appropriate scientific detachment.
Something about their reaction struck Corey as unusual, but she had no time to pursue it as a final boarding call for their train echoed through the terminal. "Let's go," she said, gesturing towards the platform. "And please try not to break anything else." The maglev train cut through the winter landscape, a silver bullet against the backdrop of snow-covered mountains. Inside, Corey attempted to brief her charges on Japanese etiquette while they pressed their faces against the windows, fogging the glass with their slightly higher body temperature. "The ryokan where we're staying is over 300 years old," she explained. "That means absolutely no roughhousing, no impromptu strength contests, and please remember to remove your footwear before stepping on tatami mats."
300 years is considered old?
Pimble asked, momentarily distracted from the scenery.
Our dormitory at the Learning Collective was carved from glacial ice during the third expansion period, approximately 12,000 of your Earth years ago.
"Well, for human construction, 300 years is significant," Corey replied, "especially considering the seismic activity in Japan."
Ah!
Vraxon exclaimed, clearly delighted to showcase his supposed knowledge.
Mount Fuji, the dormant spaceship disguised as a volcanic mountain. I have already read extensively about this.
Corey stared at him. "Mount Fuji is not a spaceship."
Of course.
Vraxon winked dramatically.
We respect your planet's classified secrets.
"It's geology, not a classified—" Corey stopped herself. "Let's focus on proper onsen etiquette. You must thoroughly wash before entering the hot spring baths." Another strange look passed between the aliens.
These baths,
Toth said carefully.
What is their temperature range?
"Usually between 40 to 43 degrees Celsius," Corey answered. "Some are slightly cooler, while others can be quite hot." All 5 aliens went still, their cranial fins flattening against their heads. "Is there a problem?" Corey asked.
No problem whatsoever,
Vraxon declared with obvious false cheer.
We are merely processing this fascinating cultural information.
Corey made a mental note to research Frisk temperature tolerance when she had a moment. Their reactions suggested something beyond mere cultural difference. The remainder of the journey passed with her attempting to explain chopstick usage to beings with 3 webbed fingers on each hand, while they countered with increasingly improbable facts about Japan they had somehow acquired. By the time they arrived at their destination, Corey had dispelled myths about ninja-operated vending machines, underwater rice farming conducted on mechanical cranes, and the belief that Hello Kitty was Japan's head of state. The ryokan stood nestled among snow-dusted pines, steam rising from the outdoor baths visible beyond the traditional wooden structure. As they approached, Corey felt a momentary pang of anxiety. The owner, Tanaka-san, was notoriously traditional and had only reluctantly agreed to host non-human guests. The sliding door opened to reveal an elderly man in a simple yukata. His deeply lined face betrayed not a flicker of surprise at the 5 enormous blue aliens clustered at his entrance. "Welcome to Matsuzawa Ryokan," he said with a formal bow. "We are honored to host representatives from Nylash." The Frisk, clearly having rehearsed this moment, attempted to return the bow. Their much larger frames made the gesture awkward, and Loomis nearly toppled forward onto the elderly innkeeper before Groldak caught him by his ceremonial sash.
We bring gratitude from our ancestral home,
Vraxon announced, his voice mercifully lower than usual. He presented Tanaka-san with a crystalline object that seemed to glow from within.
This is frozen light from our sacred caverns, a token of Frisk respect.
Tanaka-san accepted the gift with perfect composure. You honor my humble establishment. Please enter, and make yourselves comfortable. As they removed their enormous footwear, a process that took nearly 10 minutes due to the complex fastening systems, Corey noticed Tanaka-san giving her a subtle nod of approval. Perhaps the cultural exchange wouldn't be a complete disaster after all. That thought evaporated approximately 12 minutes later when she heard a tearing sound followed by Pimble's distressed voice.
The wall partition has become separated from its supporting structure. I applied minimal pressure.
Corey closed her eyes and counted to 10. Dinner was served in a private dining room with reinforced floor cushions specially prepared for the Frisk's wait. Corey watched with trepidation as elaborate kaiseki cuisine was presented on delicate ceramic dishware. Before we begin, she said quickly, remember that each dish is arranged as a form of artistic expression. Please observe it before eating. The Frisks stared at the beautiful arrangements of seasonal ingredients with expressions ranging from confusion to suspicion.
Food is art?
Groldak asked, peering at a perfectly grilled fish presented with winter chrysanthemum. In a sense, Corey explained, the presentation is part of the experience. The chef considers color, texture, seasonality, and balance in each dish. Pimble leaned dangerously close to his food, his nostrils flaring.
On Nylash, we consume nutrition paste calibrated for optimal physical performance. Appearance is irrelevant.
Well, here it's very relevant, Corey replied, so please don't just shove it all into your mouths at once. 5 pairs of eyes blinked at her simultaneously.
How else would one consume sustenance?
Toth asked with genuine confusion. What followed was a chaotic introduction to Earth dining. Despite their webbed fingers, the Frisk made valiant attempts to use chopsticks, resulting in several pieces of sashimi becoming airborne projectiles. Pimble discovered wasabi by consuming an entire ball of it in one bite, which led to him running in panicked circles around the room while making high-pitched whistling noises through his gill slits. Yet amid the chaos, something unexpected happened. The aliens began to approach the meal with increasing wonder, taking time to smell, observe, and savor each bite. Groldak became entranced by the delicate sweetness of tamago, while Loomis developed an immediate affinity for miso soup, requesting 3 additional bowls.
These flavors contain memories,
Vraxon announced suddenly, his usual boisterousness subdued.
I taste the ocean, the mountains, the changing of seasons. Your species has elevated sustenance to a form of communion with your environment.
Corey found herself speechless. It was perhaps the most insightful observation she'd heard from any of them. As the meal concluded, she mentioned their plans for the following morning. After breakfast, we'll experience one of Japan's most cherished traditions, the onsen. The sudden tension around the table was palpable. The Frisk's cranial fins flattened simultaneously.
You mentioned these are heated water pools?
Toth asked, his scientific curiosity seemingly at war with some deeper concern. Yes, Corey confirmed. The Ryokan is famous for its mineral-rich hot springs. They're very relaxing.
Relaxing?
Repeated Vraxon. The words sounded foreign in his mouth.
Yes, the boiling pools of human relaxation. We've heard of these.
They're not boiling, Corey corrected. They're hot, but comfortable.
Of course,
Loomis said, his voice unnaturally high.
Comfortable heat that humans soak in for pleasure?
The strange reactions continued as they discussed the bathing process, with the humans growing increasingly subdued. When they finally retired to their rooms, 2 connecting chambers specifically prepared with reinforced flooring, Corey couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had been left unsaid. Unable to sleep, Corey decided to check on her charges. As she approached their rooms, she heard muffled voices speaking in their native language, a series of clicks, trills, and deep resonant tones. Her universal translator picked up fragments as she drew closer.
Cannot believe they willingly immerse. Higher temperature tolerance is known, but actual immersion in heated? Considered execution by boiling on Nylash.
Corey froze. Execution by boiling? She pressed closer to the paper door, her translator working to process their rapid speech.
We must honor their customs,
came Vraxon's distinctive voice.
If the humans can endure this trial, we must show equal courage. But Vraxon,
protested who Cora assumed was Loomis.
Water above 35 degrees causes convulsions in our species. They're talking about 43 degrees. Perhaps human skin has protective properties,
suggested Toth.
Or maybe this is how they evaluate the worthiness of galactic visitors. I have prepared my death poem,
Loomis declared solemnly.
Would you like to hear it?
Corey had heard enough. She slid the door open to find all 5 Frisk seated in a circle, what appeared to be personal tokens arranged between them. They startled at her entrance, fins rising in alarm.
Professor Corey!
Vraxon exclaimed.
We were merely discussing tomorrow's cultural experience.
You think the onsen will kill you? She said flatly. The aliens exchanged guilty glances.
Not kill,
Toth clarified.
Merely cause extreme pain, possible neurological damage, and potential cardiac events, and kill.
Why didn't you say something? Corey asked, entering the room and sliding the door closed behind her.
We did not wish to appear weak, Vraxon admitted. Humans are renowned for their endurance of extreme conditions. We wanted to properly partake of your culture.
Wait, Corey said, realization dawning. Do you think hot springs are some kind of endurance test?
Is it not?
Asked Groldak.
On our world, water above 35 degrees Celsius is used only for the most severe criminal punishments. The concept of willingly entering such temperatures for enjoyment is incomprehensible.
Corey sat down with them and sighed, suddenly understanding their behavior throughout the day. I am sorry. This is my fault. I should have looked into this before, but yes, hot springs aren't painful for humans. Our bodies have different temperature tolerances than yours, it seems. What feels pleasantly warm to us might be dangerous for your species.
But the water truly is heated?
Pimble asked.
This is not metaphorical language?
It's really heated, Corey confirmed. But it's not boiling and it doesn't harm us. In fact, it's therapeutic. The minerals in the water can help with various health conditions, and the heat relaxes our muscles.
Fascinating,
Toth murmured, already typing notes.
Human biochemistry must process heat through entirely different pathways than Frisk physiology.
You don't have to participate in the onsen, Corey assured them. We can find other activities.
No,
Vraxon interjected.
We came to experience human culture in its authentic form. We will observe this practice, even if direct participation might be challenging for our biology.
Corey studied them with new appreciation. Despite their boisterous and often chaotic behavior, there was an earnest desire to understand humanity that she hadn't fully recognized until now. Get some sleep, she suggested, rising to leave. Tomorrow, we'll figure out an approach that works for everyone. As she slid the door closed, she heard Loomis ask plaintively,
Does anyone still want to hear my death poem? I worked very hard on the metaphors.
Morning arrived with a fresh snowfall blanketing the grounds of the Ryokan. Corey found the Frisk already awake, engaged in what appeared to be ritualistic preparations. Toth was scanning each of his companions with various devices, while Vraxon applied some kind of protective gel to his skin. Loomis was practicing controlled breathing exercises, and Pimble seemed to be consuming emergency rations from their homeworld. Gruldak sat cross-legged in meditation, occasionally emitting deep humming tones. "Good morning," Corey greeted them. "I've been thinking about our discussion last night. I spoke with Tanaka-san, and there's a less hot spring that's used primarily for therapeutic purposes. The temperature is lower, around 37 degrees. Would you be willing to test it? Just a toe, perhaps?" The Frisk exchanged glances, their fins rippling in silent communication.
"We have prepared ourselves for the full human experience,"
Vraxon declared, standing to his full height.
"Toth has applied a thermal-resistant coating to our epidermis, and we have each written messages to our reproductive collectives in case of misfortune."
Corey suppressed a smile. "I appreciate your bravery, but I think we can approach this more scientifically. Let's start with observation." She led them through the ryokan to the outdoor bathing area. The morning air was crisp, creating dramatic plumes of steam rising from the various pools nestled among snow-covered rocks and winter bare maples. Several human guests were already soaking, their expressions serene as snow fell gently around them. The Frisk stood transfixed at the sight.
"They show no signs of distress,"
whispered Toth, surreptitiously scanning a nearby elderly man with his device.
"Vital signs indicate relaxation rather than physiological stress."
"As I mentioned," Corey said, "for humans this is pleasant. Now, would one of you like to test the cooler pool?" After much deliberation and several rounds of what appeared to be their equivalent of rock-paper-scissors, involving complex fin positions, Vraxon was selected as the test subject. The others gathered around him in a protective formation as he approached the edge of the therapeutic pool.
"Your courage honors our ancestors,"
Gruldak intoned solemnly.
"Should your nervous system fail, we will preserve your memories in the glacial archives,"
promised Pimble. "Perhaps your hand first?" Corey suggested gently. Vraxon nodded, his expression one of grim determination. With excruciating slowness, he extended one webbed hand toward the streaming water. The other Frisk leaned forward in anticipation, fins fully extended in what Corey now recognized as their expression of extreme stress. Vraxon's fingertips touched the water. He yanked his hand back immediately, staring at it in disbelief. Then cautiously, he extended it again, this time allowing his fingers to submerge.
"It is warm,"
he said, sounding astonished.
"but not painful. Is your neural function still operational?"
Toth demanded, scanning Vraxon's arm.
"Completely,"
Vraxon confirmed, now dipping his entire hand into the water.
"It feels unusual, but not unpleasant."
Encouraged by this success, the other Frisk took turns testing the water. Their initial trepidation gave way to fascination as they discovered that while the temperature was higher than they would normally tolerate, it didn't cause the pain or damage they had feared.
"The mineral content must be interacting with our skin chemistry differently than the water on our homeworld,"
Toth hypothesized, now kneeling by the pool with various testing implements.
"The sulfur compounds, particularly, seem to create a buffering effect."
An elderly Japanese man soaking in the pool regarded them with amused interest. "First time in an onsen?" he asked in accented English. "These are the first of their species to experience our hot springs," Corey explained. "Ah," the old man nodded sagely. "My grandfather built this ryokan's first bath after discovering the spring had healing properties for his arthritis." Toth's fins perked up at this.
"You deliberately channeled potential hazardous thermal water for health purposes?"
"Of course," the old man replied. "That is what humans do. We turn challenges into benefits." The revelation seemed to profoundly impact the Frisk. They gathered at the pool's edge, engaged in deep discussion that even Corey's translator struggled to fully capture. Terms like adaptive utilization and thermal reconfiguration featured prominently. Eventually, Vraxon made a decisive gesture and began removing his outer garments.
"We will attempt partial immersion,"
he announced to Corey.
"Toth believes this unique mineral composition provides unexpected benefits to our thermal layers. I trust him."
One by one, the Frisk followed the proper washing protocol Corey had taught them, then carefully entered the therapeutic pool, stopping at knee depth. Their expressions cycled through discomfort, surprise, and finally, something approaching wonder.
"The heat penetrates differently than on Nylash,"
Groldak observed quietly.
"There, it attacks. Here, it embraces. I feel my circulation pattern shifting,"
Pimble added, studying the submerged portion of his legs.
"The blood vessels are dilating rather than constricting in panic."
Loomis, who had been the most fearful, slowly sat down until the water reached his waist. His fins, usually in constant motion, fell into a peaceful droop.
"I understand now why humans do this," he murmured. "It is like being suspended between states of being."
The elderly man nodded approvingly. "You learn quickly for visitors." Corey watched as their boisterous personalities momentarily subdued by genuine contemplation. It was, she realized, exactly the kind of cultural exchange she had hoped for. Over the next several days, the Frisk became increasingly fascinated with onsen culture. What began as cautious experimentation evolved into methodical research as they visited different hot springs throughout the region, each with unique mineral compositions. Toth led the scientific inquiry, meticulously documenting the effects of various waters on Frisk physiology. He discovered that certain mineral combinations actually enhanced their natural regenerative abilities, while others improved their thermal regulation, a significant benefit for a species evolved for cold environments.
"The iron content in this spring increases oxygen transport efficiency by 23% in our bloodstream,"
he announced after one particularly enthusiastic testing session.
"It could revolutionize Frisk medicine for those suffering from deep ice expedition sickness."
Meanwhile, Vraxon and Groldak became interested in the cultural aspects of hot spring bathing. They engaged elderly Japanese visitors in long conversations about traditional beliefs surrounding the healing properties of different waters. Their sincere interest and respectful questions won over many initially wary locals. Pimble, true to his nature, focused on the culinary traditions associated with onsen, learning about hot spring boiled eggs and vegetables steamed using natural thermal vents. He began experimenting with combining earth ingredients with Frisk dietary supplements, creating bizarre but enthusiastic fusion cuisine that the Ryokan staff accepted with impressive politeness. Even Loomis overcame his initial fear, becoming particularly fond of a small private bath nestled among snow-dusted bamboo. He spent hours there composing what he called water poetry, rhythmic compositions that attempted to capture the sensory experience of hot spring bathing for his people back home. The locals, initially startled by the towering blue visitors, gradually warmed to them. The Frisks' genuine appreciation of Japanese traditions and their childlike wonder at new experiences proved endearing. Children especially were drawn to them, fascinated by their color-changing fins and webbed hands. Corey found herself enjoying their company far more than she had anticipated. Their perspective allowed her to see aspects of her own culture with fresh eyes, and their unabashed enthusiasm was contagious. When Tanaka-san mentioned extending their stay by a week, she found herself readily agreeing. "They are unusual guests," the elderly innkeeper observed one evening as they watched the Frisk attempting to learn traditional folk dancing from some local residents. "But they have good hearts." "They do," Corey agreed, wincing slightly as Vraxon's enthusiastic turn sent a paper lantern flying. Just very energetic ones. The trouble began on their 10th day, when Loomis discovered what locals called the Ancient Spring, a small, secluded hot spring deep in the forest that folklore claimed had been used by monks for meditation since the Kamakura period. Despite its historical significance, the spring itself was simple, little more than a steaming pool surrounded by moss-covered stones and protected by a small, weathered shrine. A group of teenagers from the nearby high school had taken Loomis there after he expressed interest in the area's oldest thermal waters. Eager to impress his new friends with his extensive research, Loomis attempted to measure the spring's exact depth using equipment from the Frisk ship. What exactly went wrong remained unclear, even after multiple attempts at explanation. Between Loomis's panicked apologies and the teenagers' fragmented accounts, and Toth's overly technical analysis, Corey pieced together that the scanning device had somehow triggered a reaction with minerals in the spring, causing a surge that damaged the natural stone formation that had channeled the water for centuries. By the time Corey arrived at the site with Tanaka-san and the other Frisk, the ancient spring had been reduced to a chaotic mess of mud, displaced stones, and randomly spouting water. The small shrine had been knocked askew, though fortunately not destroyed. The expression on Tanaka-san's face made Corey's heart sink. The old man stared at the damaged site in silence, his weathered features unreadable.
I was attempting to document its geological formation for our research,
Loomis explained miserably, his usual exuberance entirely absent.
The scanner must have interacted with rare mineral deposits beneath the surface. I didn't know. I never intended...
The spring has been part of our community for over 800 years, Tanaka-san said quietly. Generations of my family have been its caretakers. The local teenagers shifted uncomfortably, clearly regretting their part in the incident. One girl stepped forward with a deep bow. It was our fault too, Tanaka-san. We should not have brought visitors here without permission. The old man acknowledged her with a slight nod but returned his attention to the Frisk. I believe it would be best if your visit concluded early. I will make arrangements for your return to Tokyo tomorrow. The alien's fins drooped in unison, an expression Corey now recognized as profound shame. Without protest, they bowed deeply to Tanaka-san and turned to leave, their usual boisterous energy completely absent. As they trudged back toward the Ryokan, Corey found herself unexpectedly disappointed. Despite their chaotic influence, she had grown fond of these well-meaning aliens, and their genuine appreciation for Japanese culture had been refreshing. More importantly, she recognized that they had made a mistake, not committed an act of malice. That evening, the Frisk isolated themselves in their rooms, declining dinner and interaction. From the hallway, Corey could hear them engaged in subdued conversation, punctuated by what sounded like ritual chanting. After a restless night, she decided to confront them directly. She found all five seated in formal meditation postures, wearing their ceremonial attire. I understand you're leaving today, she said, sliding the door closed behind her.
We have brought dishonor to your cultural exchange program,
Vraxon replied without opening his eyes.
We have prepared formal apologies for the diplomatic archives.
What happened was an accident, Corey said, but hiding away isn't going to fix anything.
We have disgraced ourselves, Groldak said. On Nylash, when one causes damage to sacred site, they enter isolation until restoration can be performed.
And how long does that usually take? Corey asked.
Until the site is restored,
Toth explained.
Which, in this case, is impossible given our imminent departure and the specialized nature of the damaged formation.
Corey studied them, struck by an idea. So you're saying that on your world you would stay and fix what you broke?
Of course,
Vraxon replied, as if it were obvious.
but we lack the necessary equipment and expertise to repair a system we do not fully understand."
Perhaps, Corey suggested, instead of hiding in shame or leaving in disgrace, you could offer to repair the spring. Not with your advanced technology, but with your strength and willingness to learn from those who understand it best. The Frisk exchanged uncertain glances, their fins shifting in silent communications.
"You think the humans would accept our assistance after what we've done?"
Loomis asked hesitantly. "I think they might," Corey said, "especially if you approach it with humility and genuine desire to make amends. Isn't that better than running away?" The aliens conferred among themselves, speaking in their native language too rapidly for her translator to follow. Finally, Vraxon turned back to her.
"We would be honored to attempt restoration," he said formally. "Will you help us communicate this offer appropriately?"
Corey nodded, feeling a small measure of hope. "Let's go speak with Tanaka-san together." The old innkeeper received them in his private office, listening impassively as Vraxon, with uncharacteristic restraint, offered the services of all 5 Frisk in repairing the damaged spring.
"We understand that our technology caused this harm," he explained, "but perhaps our physical capabilities can assist in the restoration. We are much stronger than humans and can move the larger stones that would otherwise require machinery."
"The shrine is also damaged," Tanaka-san observed. "Do you know anything of traditional Japanese carpentry?"
"No," Vraxon admitted, "but we are willing to learn if someone would teach us."
A long silence followed as the elderly man considered their offer. Finally, he set down his teacup with a decisive click. "My grandfather once told me that true guests leave a place better than they found it," he said. "I will speak with the village elders and the local stonemason. If they agree, you may help with the restoration under proper supervision." The Frisk's fin rose in hopeful unison. "However," Tanaka-san continued, "this will extend your stay by at least another week. Is Professor Takashi able to remain as your liaison?" All eyes turned to Corey. She had lectures scheduled, committee meetings to attend, but looking at the aliens' expectant faces, she found herself nodding. "I can make arrangements," she said. The work began the following day. Under the direction of Ishida-san, an elderly stonemason with hands like gnarled roots, the Frisk set about carefully moving the displaced rocks according to old hand-drawn maps of the spring's original formation. Their strength proved invaluable as they lifted boulders that would have required heavy equipment to move. But it was their careful attention to Ishida-san's instructions that truly impressed Corey. These same aliens who had nearly demolished the Ryokan's dining room now worked with surprising delicacy, placing centuries-old stones with millimeter precision. Meanwhile, Tanaka-san's son-in-law, a carpenter specializing in traditional shrine restoration, guided Loomis and Pimble in repairing the damaged shrine. Their webbed hands made fine detail work challenging, but they compensated with intense focus and willingness to repeat tasks until perfect. Local residents, initially skeptical, began stopping by to watch the restoration. Some brought food for the workers, while others offered suggestions of historical information about the spring. Children were particularly fascinated, and the Frisk took breaks to answer their endless questions about life on a frozen moon. On the 3rd day of work, as they cleared debris from the spring's main vent, Toth made a discovery. His scanner detected an unusual mineral formation deep within the underground channel that fed the spring.
"This is extraordinary,"
he exclaimed, showing his readings to Ishida-san through an interpretive hologram.
"There appears to be a secondary thermal vent connected to a deeper magma pocket. The mineral composition is remarkably similar to our sacred healing pools on Nylash."
The stonemason studied the hologram with narrowed eyes. "My grandfather spoke of an underground network connecting all hot springs in this valley. He believed they shared a common source deep beneath the mountain." This revelation sparked intense interest among both the Frisk and the local residents. After careful consultation with geological experts summoned from a nearby university, they modified the restoration plan to incorporate this new understanding of the spring's structure.
If we adjust the stone configuration here,
Toth explained, pointing to his revised design,
we can create a dual-flow system that brings more of the deeper minerals to the surface while maintaining the traditional appearance and temperature of the original spring.
The work took on new energy as humans and aliens collaborated, combining traditional knowledge with advanced understandings of thermal dynamics. What had begun as simple restoration evolved into a careful enhancement that would preserve the spring's historical significance while improving its therapeutic properties. After 10 days of intensive work, the restoration was complete. The ancient spring had been reborn, outwardly identical to its historical appearance, but subtly enhanced through their combined efforts. A small ceremony was organized to commemorate the reopening. The entire village gathered, along with visitors from neighboring towns who had heard about the unusual collaboration. Tanaka-san, dressed in formal attire, led the proceedings. For 8 centuries, this spring has been a place of healing and reflection for our community, he began. Today, we celebrate not only its restoration, but its renewal through unexpected friendship. The Frisk stood awkwardly in the place of honor, their ceremonial attire now supplemented with traditional Japanese haori jackets gifted by the villagers. Vraxon had been asked to speak on their behalf. When his turn came, the alien stepped forward, his usual bombastic confidence replaced by thoughtful humility.
We came to your world seeking legendary warriors,
Vraxon began, his voice carrying across the gathered crowd.
We expected to find strength in combat and endurance. Instead, we discovered a different kind of power, one that transforms challenge into humility.
He gestured towards the restored spring, steam rising gently into the winter air.
On our homeworld, heat is an enemy to be feared. Water like this would cause only pain and destruction, yet humans, with your remarkable adaptability, have transformed what could harm you into something that heals. You did not conquer the hot spring. You befriended it.
Murmurs of appreciation rippled through the crowd as Vraxon continued.
When we damaged this sacred place, we expected banishment or punishment. Instead, you invited us to participate in its renewal. You taught us that true strength lies not in enduring hardship, but in transforming it into benefit.
Other Frisk moved forward to stand beside their companion, heads bowed in respect.
The ancient spring now carries a piece of our world within it,
Toth added.
The deeper minerals we helped channel reminds us of our sacred pools on Nylash. Through this coincidence of geology, 2 worlds separated by countless light years share a connection.
As a final gesture, the Frisk performed a traditional blessing from their homeworld, a haunting harmonic chant that caused their fins to vibrate in synchronized patterns, creating ripples across the surface of the spring without touching it. The crowd watched in awed silence as the alien's song echoed among the snow-covered trees. When the ceremony concluded, villagers and aliens alike tested the restored spring. The elderly particularly noted the improved effects on their joints, while the Frisk demonstrated how certain minerals in the water created an iridescent sheen on their amphibious skin, a reaction they called the blessing of the ancient ice in their culture. 2 weeks later than originally planned, Corey stood with the Frisk at the train platform. Their luggage had somehow multiplied, now including various gifts from villagers, samples of spring minerals carefully preserved in special containers, and several traditional crafts they had become enamored with.
I cannot believe our cultural exchange concludes today,
Vraxon said, his booming voice having modulated to a more appropriate volume over their time together.
We have learned more about humanity in these weeks than in all our previous studies.
And I've learned quite a bit about the Frisk, Corey replied with a smile. Though my eardrums may never fully recover. Loomis approached her with a small wooden box.
This contains copies of my water poetry, he explained earnestly. I have attempted to capture the sensation of hot spring immersion for those on Nylash who might never experience it directly.
I'll treasure it, Corey assured him, touched by the gesture. Toth cleared his throat, a habit he'd picked up from the humans.
We have submitted a formal proposal to the Galactic Concord and your Earth authorities, he announced. Based on our research here, we believe this region would be ideal for an interspecies wellness center, a place where various galactic citizens could experience therapeutic traditions from multiple worlds.
You're serious? Corey asked, surprised by their initiative.
Absolutely,
Groldak confirmed.
The geological uniqueness of this area, combined with traditional Japanese hospitality concepts and healing practices from other worlds, could create something unprecedented. And profitable,
added Pimble practically.
The village economy would benefit significantly. They've asked me to serve as scientific advisor,
Toth said with evident pride,
which would necessitate regular return visits to Earth. And you would be its cultural liaison,
Vraxon declared as if it were obvious.
If you are willing. Your patience with 5 aquatic imbeciles has been inspirational.
Before she could respond, the maglev train arrived, its sleek form gliding silently into the station. As the doors opened, Vraxon surprised her with a formal frisk gesture of respect, a complex movement of hands and fins that she recognized from their cultural briefing materials as reserved for honored teachers.
Humans may not be the strongest species in the galaxy, he said quietly, but you might well be the most adaptable. That, Professor Corey, is your true power.
As the train pulled away, carrying her unusual students back towards Tokyo, Corey remained on the platform long after it disappeared from view. She thought about hot springs and frozen moons, about misunderstandings and discoveries, about the strange harmony that could emerge between vastly different beings when approached with openness and respect. In the distance, steam rose from the ancient spring, now informally dubbed Two Worlds by the villagers, a visible reminder that what some species perceive as danger, others transform into healing. Perhaps that, more than anything, was humanity's unique contribution to the galactic community. And somewhere on a frigid moon orbiting a distant star, future generations of Frisk would learn about the strange, resilient species that voluntarily soaked in hot water and, in doing so, taught their visitors about a different kind of strength.